Hi, I'm Jess, co-host of the Elder Tree podcast and herbalist at Evans Head Naturopathy. You're listening to the Self-Care with Herbs segment, where each month I invite a new guest to chat about how weaving plants into their days enriches their experience of self-care, exploring routines, rituals and recipes for elevating mind, body and spirit. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you've joined me. Today I'm chatting with Sue Daly, a naturopath of 25 years with a wealth of experience and a background in education. Her passion is herbal medicine, and she's recently released Sappho, a divine skincare range featuring healing botanicals. During our chat, Sue shares how a love of spending time in nature as a young child led to a calling to complete a home remedy herbal medicine course when her children were young. Through this course, she felt empowered to care for her young family, which sparked a passion and led to further study. Sue experienced her first introduction to root cause medicine when her daughter was being supported by a local herbalist. This was a light bulb moment. Sue spent her formative years as a naturopath in the iconic Traditional Medicinals in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales before opening her own practice, the Bangalow Naturopath, and finally settling in Illuka as the Herb Woman, where she practices and creates her beautiful skincare range. Sue believes that self-care is keeping yourself well enough to be able to do all the things you need to do. She believes it's about setting healthy boundaries and finding balance, both of which we discuss in depth. Sue's a bit of a doer and confesses to often being drawn to staying up late, researching or creating art. She's known for burning the candle at both ends. We chat about how it took a loud message from the universe and her body for Sue to ask, "Why have I landed here again?" Sometimes it's from these moments that the most growth occurs. Sue's most recent passion is using herbs topically for self-care. We delve into the birth of her gorgeous Sappho skincare range, as well as the beautiful simplicity of herbal infused oils. Sue describes the most nourishing morning ritual, which allows her to enter an almost meditative state. We chat about how the benefits of self-care really start to flow as soon as we make the decision to honour ourselves, before we even make any changes, allowing ourselves to flow into a state of receiving. Our conversation weaves and flows into many places. We touch on how we support our clients, the beauty of drop dosing, the benefits of getting to know a couple of herbs really well, and the one herb we reach for to support women in all phases of life. Sue is such a wise woman, and she generously shares so much during this interview. I promise you're going to love it. Hi Sue, we're sitting here together in your beautiful clinic and dispensary, surrounded by your beautiful herbal allies. I can see liquid herbs on the shelf, I can see your beautiful skincare range, and there's plants everywhere, and I just feel surrounded by the plant medicine. I'm excited to have a chat with you this morning.
Thanks, Jess. Lovely for you to be here.
Yeah, it's really lovely. We're talking all about self-care today, but before we dive into that element, I'd really love to hear about how your relationship with plant medicine began. I'm lucky enough to have learnt from you as a teacher, so I know a little bit about your background, but I'd really love to hear about how that first spark came about for you.
Well, I think as a kid, I used to play around. I used to like to play games with family. You know, you're doing sort of play medicine and hospitals and things. I can remember we used to mix things up with plants and sand and that kind of thing. That was my first sort of memory, and I didn't think much about that until in my 20s a course came out that caught my eye, and it was through the Queensland Institute of Natural Health, and they put a course which was herbal medicine for the home. And I don't know why, but I had to do that course. And it arrived in all its packaging, and you had to send your assignments back. But it was very hands-on. And, oh my God, it opened up my world. I was so excited about doing this because it was initially all about the plants and the actions of plants. But then we went into, the teas and infusions and decoctions and how to make creams. And, I just thought this was amazing. And I just put it down to just something that I could do for myself in the background. And then, again, that was something that was in the back of my mind, and I did. And then it wasn't really until I had my children, again, I saw a course in the local newspaper, and it was about a herbal medicine course. And again, the same reaction to the Quinn's course. It was like, I just have to do this. And my mother at the time, who'd come to visit, said to me, I haven't seen you so excited about anything in so long. I said, look, I can't do it. I've got the kids now at home. I had been teaching, and I'd sort of resigned from that at the point in time, and I just didn't see financially how it would work. She went home to Gosford, 2 hours away, and she rang me up and she said, I've spoken to your father. If you want to do that course, the check's here, come and get it. I got straight in the car and got it and did the course with at Newcastle College of Herbal Medicine, and that's where it started, and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah. It sounds like it was a real calling for you.
Oh, definitely. That was the thing that just made me so excited, and still does.
So quite early on, having that really lovely relationship with the plants in the garden, and then just feeling that calling to do those 2 courses.
Yeah, definitely.
Jumped right in. Yeah. So tell us about where your journey went from finishing off that course at the Newcastle College.
From Newcastle College, I had to come. By that stage, we were moving up north, and in my clinic year, I was pretty much commuting between Newcastle and the Northern Rivers in Bangalow to finish it. And everyone said, "Oh, you're mad, just let it go." But I then found some herbalists in Lismore, and a lot of people would know Trish and Steph. So Trish Clough and Stephanie Willisey, that had Trad Med in Lismore, and they agreed to put me under their wing while I finished off my client cases, and I'd go in there and ask them for, would this be okay if I did this, and at the end of that, I finished that off, got my my papers, and then something came up for a job. I think it was a full-time job. I didn't get it, but they looked at me and they said, we'd like to have you on as a casual. So I started going in there probably a Saturday morning, and then it got to be 2 days, then 3, and then 4. And then I was at Traditional Medicinals for quite a few years before I launched into my own dispensary in Bangalow.
Wow, yeah. And so take us back to before the formal study with Newcastle College, that first foray into that home remedy course. Did that come into the way that you cared for your kids when they were born?
Oh, definitely. I was making, for my kids, I was making syrups, and I was making creams, and also because of that background, initially when my children got sick, my husband said to me, we're not messing around with them, we're taking them to the doctors. It got to the point, and I said, I'm not messing around with them, I'm taking them to a herbalist. And I had a lovely herbalist in Newcastle that every time one of my daughters got a cough or a cold, she'd make a really good tonic. And one day she said to me, are you going to get to the cause of this? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm here with you. And she said, no, we're remedying the situation and the symptoms, but she said, I think you need to find out why. Particularly one daughter was getting sick all the time. She was quite colicky as a baby. And she sent me off to get some allergy tests done with my first daughter, Bo. And it was obvious that she was sensitive to dairy products. And so I took Bo, by that stage was 3. I took her off dairy products. I'd been dabbling with it. I knew a little bit about that, but I didn't realise this, the necessity to be really quite clear and strong in enforcing it. And it made an absolute difference to her life, to my life. And it was, how do people not know this?
Yes.
How do people not see that relation to nutrition and health? And that to me probably was like a mind-boggling
light
event.
bulb moment.
Yeah, very much so. And that's around the time that course came up. And I just knew that needed to be, I needed to do that. So, yeah.
So that initial home remedy course really helped you to feel empowered to be able to care for the kids.
Yes, it
and
did.
Yes. Yeah, seeing the herbalist helped you to understand that we don't just put a Band-Aid on.
Exactly.
You got to go back and find that root cause.
Yes, but at the same time, the tinctures that she put the girls on, particularly Bo on, were fantastic. Like there was instant soothing, and you know, like a child that I'd had up all night coughing and crying and tired and couldn't sleep. Suddenly, I can remember one day I just took Bo to her and said, help, handed her over. And she made a tonic up. And pretty much we gave her this tonic, and you could see her relax. And we laid her down. It was Anne at the time, laid her down on the bed, and she went to sleep. Oh my God, this is magic.
Oh wow, this child that had been up all night coughing and you hadn't been able to see her.
And you know, as a mother, how anxious you get when you can't find an adequate solution. And I was given other options, you know, from orthodox medicine, and it just didn't help. You know, it wasn't really doing what I needed it to do. So that was
probably taking away the symptoms, but not helping.
Oh, definitely, suppressing.
So I know that you've been practicing for a lot of years now, and also that you've taught as well, both herbal medicine and in schools. And I imagine that you've supported both yourself through some times where self-care has been really important, but also imagine you've provided numerous clients with many different ways for them to bring self-care to the fore. So I was wondering, you know, what does self-care mean to you?
I think self-care is keeping yourself well enough to be able to perform all the things you need to do, both in your job and in your lifestyle. So, you know, to be able to exercise, to be able to socialize, to be able to do your job, you know, functioning, all of those things, you know. So in order to do that, you know, keeping up routines, like I walk daily, I do yoga, I've got a few sports that I do. I'll make sure I'll get a massage every now and again. I will take a long bath with Epsom salts, or those kinds of things. But I think the most important thing for me about self-care, and this has been a huge learning journey for me, is setting healthy boundaries. And I think as a practitioner that's important, but it is for a mother, it is in friendships, because as a practitioner particularly, I know when I first started this, I wanted to jump in and help everybody. Not everybody wants your help. And not only that, if they do, it's at what point do you stand back and let them become empowered. And then there's the everyday people around you that may also need your help, and it's at what point do you say no and not get involved in. And I think that boundary setting is really important for self-care, because you can get lost in other people.
And especially I think in caring professions, which we're both in, where the instinct is to not put on our own oxygen mask first, but to, you know, help whoever is asking for our help, no matter what state we're in.
Yes.
So as you said, having those healthy boundaries is important for us, but also improves the way that we are able to care for others that are seeking out our help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I had a close friend that, you know, back when I had studied iridology and I'd sort of using my friends and family as guinea pigs, saying, oh my goodness, I think you've got candida. And, you know, her saying, well, you know, what do you think? And I'm saying, it was explaining how that would affect the bowel. And she'd had quite an ongoing history of a nervous bowel and kind of continually rubbing, you know, her stomach to sort of try and, you know, keep this, you know, reduce the severity of the symptoms. And that led her to go through a whole heap of other journeys with specialists and allergists, etc. Never really asked my help, but I had jumped in with a whole heap of information. And it's only sort of 20 years on, she's come back and she said, you know how you told me about that candida? It's come up a few times. I think you were right. So it's trying to find that was a time when I wasn't needed. Yes. I was sort of offered information, and then, you know, they sort of step back from it. So it is trying to find that happy medium.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder for you, and maybe even for clients, what sorts of whispers do you start to hear, maybe in your mind, but also physical symptoms, when you know that it's time I really need to invest some time in self-care?
For me, it's muscular.
Okay.
So when I had my children, one day I found I leant over to tie my shoes up and couldn't get up, and I'm thinking, oh, this had never happened before. So my back went into a spasm, and that was sort of the first inkling that, oh, I must be a little bit tense. That happened 2 or 3 times when my children were young, where my back went into a spasm, and at one point quite chronically, so I actually had to be lifted out of a toilet block, put into a car, and then sort of carried in home, which I stayed on my back for about a week at that point. So I know that if I'm doing too much, I get tense, and I'm not watching my posture, and I'm not watching, how I carry myself, that I can get myself into a situation where I'm spasming. I've learnt, pretty much to manage that, but it's also been my greatest lessons, because the times where I've actually landed and literally been on my back are the times where I've reevaluated what's going on in my life. So those little, like you say, those little niggles, those little whispers are saying, careful.
Yes.
Yes. This is something perhaps you shouldn't be doing, or too much. And one day I had been organising a garage sale, and I was racing around in the morning, and at that stage of my life I was trying to make ends meet, and I did garage sales a bit. And I went for a slider across the veranda in the early morning dew, and again ended on my back. And I'm thinking, why? It was that good questioning. Why have I landed here again? And that moment in time was life-changing. I put some things into place that changed how I did that. So as a result, being aware that I do, if I'm not living my authentic self and being, self-care, that it will kind of be muscular tension. And the other thing is, the other whisper, it's not a whisper for everybody else, is irritability. And I get a bit moody, and that tells me that I'm burning the candle at both ends, because I can stay up all night. Like, I do art at night, and I do, research at night, and I can keep on going, and people around me say, oh, you just keep on going, and then there's a moment you think, ooh, I just reacted a bit there.
Yes.
So that's my other little...
Yeah, so with your muscular whispers, sometimes if you're not listening to those whispers, they become quite loud shouts, and it's in those moments when your body's not letting you do anything else that epiphany comes. And
yes, for sure.
You're able
Definitely.
to make those changes.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what are some of the barriers for you that get in the way of regularly implementing self-care?
Procrastination is one.
Yeah.
And again, I think that comes from being tired. I think when you push, and then you find yourself not being able to, and you're sort of avoiding what you're meant to be doing. I think that does come from just not taking time out to rest and rethink. Because once you do, and your mind gets clear and you feel ready to go, that's one thing. The other one too, I think, as much as part of my self-care is boundary setting, is there's times when, as much as I implement that, the people around me are pushing back.
Yeah.
And I find that can become exhausting, and I can find myself having to put out fires on all sides at time, which is something that's not really for me to do, but there's no one else around perhaps to do it. And so that can also pull on my energy and my time and my ability to function properly.
And I guess too, to step back and go, it's actually me that needs this care, before I start trying to put out any of these fires.
Yeah, and it is also what we were saying at the beginning, is trying to find that balance between when you're needed and when you're not.
Yes.
Because, especially with family, you can jump in and be the one to care and keep caring and keep caring, without realising that it is actually you do need your own time back, and as a mother, you can with your kids, people you can tend to do that a lot.
And there's all those expectations around that too, where if you're in that role, then there's expectations from those around you that even if you aren't in the best state to be providing that care, that's what you've always done.
Yes, exactly.
And so you're going to sort out whether or not you've got those whispers in your ear going, you need to stop.
Yes.
There's people coming at you.
Yeah, and people, when they are in a state of need, they don't see any of that. No. It's like,
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm wondering, Sue, what sorts of rituals and routines, we've talked a little bit about the movement because that's a way that your body talks to you in terms of the muscular state. What sorts of routines and rituals do you tend to weave into your days in terms of bringing the herbs and the plants in?
Okay. Well, I do the self-care with the kind of exercise, etc. I would bring the plants in for me as far as my own plant medicine, do you think? If I feel that I need something specific, I will make sure I'm taking a supplement or mixing myself a tonic that addresses those needs. Quite often I'll just mix up myself a kind of like a herbal vitamin mineral mix, just to sort of have that as my background, to have that in my day. It depends sort of what's going on, but there'll definitely be herbs, and like I keep up supplementation too of like the minerals, zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, that kind of thing as well. And I think too, obviously with plants in my life, I use them every day in my skincare.
Yes, let's talk about that. You've got that beautiful Sappho range. So let's talk about how, because that's only recently birthed. Let's start with how that began.
Okay, well that began during COVID actually, because I was doing lots of walking. I was walking more than I usually walk. I was walking, 2 or 3 beaches and thinking, I had been doing some teaching then, so teaching was online, and I'm thinking, how can I do some things like this online? And when I had my dispensary in Bangalow, obviously I made a lot of therapeutic creams and oils and things, and every now and again someone would say, can you make me, and it would be something, a face cream or something thereabouts. So I went off and did some training in skincare in Sydney, just to sort of so that I'd have that extra ability in my dispensary to be able to have a lot more knowledge about what was and wasn't suitable for people. I had all the background about the herbs, etc., and if they, would be for sensitive or allergies or that sort of thing. But to get to that nitty-gritty of how to completely nourish a skin that was also inflamed, or a person that had acne, but also there were other, problems. So how do you kind of do that balance as well? So I started to do that in my dispensary, but apart from 1 or 2, people that I was still kind of sending those off to, I thought, I'm going to sort of experiment with this. And it was partly because I just love being in my dispensary, mixing and making and experimenting. And so I started out with a cream, and I think it was partly all for my own self as well, to be able to create a cream that as I'm aging, that was going to support, my skin and not be full of toxins and nasties and all the things that I didn't want into my skin. So I started experimenting and, giving little pots of things to friends and neighbours and getting some feedback. And I eventually put together my first face cream, which is a kind of it's to help regenerate the skins and to sort of to help to nourish and nurture but build. So the cream itself is more very much in that kind of collagen, elastin building kind of mode, with kind of really good ingredients that will help facilitate the growth and repair, but at the same time other nutrients that are going to offer the correct vitamins and minerals for that to happen, and then all those essential oils and seed oils to complement my herbs, and then some super powders, like of course we hear a lot about hyaluronic acid, and I use beta glucan and some of those things which I source naturally. I don't use natural versions of things. And then also that helps kind of boost that. And that led me to do some other things like some oil serums, which I'm loving. So I've got a cleanser now, but I've also got a gel serum and an oil serum, which are sort of geared for different skin types, an eye one, but some of them do more than just skincare. They actually do other things, but I sort of recommend those to people kind of individually when needed.
Tell us about some of those other background things that are happening.
As far as some of the oils and things, well, say for example the eye cream, you're doing it to sort of prevent lines and wrinkles and things, but it's also preventing pigmentation. It's also preventing dark circles. It's and some of the oils, for example, the oil serum is about balancing skin. So if you've got a dry skin, an oily skin, and people will tend to use like a facial wash and like that feeling of tightness, and then probably some kind of a toner, and everything gets all tight. What your skin will do in that is then kind of burst into an oily state in order to try and rebalance again. So the good thing about oils is they get down deep, they nourish, they don't destroy the natural oil barrier of the skin, and so you can clean and shine the skin, and that just in itself is a nice action as well. But the more I'm using them and the more I'm making them, the more excited I get, because I've got one at the moment that it's not of that range, but I just made for a more of an eczema psoriasis one that I made for a person the other day, and it accidentally got on my finger, and I licked it and went, oh my God, that's delicious. And so I think that's the sign of a good cream, is you can lick them off, And
absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the botanicals that go into that range?
Yes, so some of the, you mean herbally?
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, I won't give too much away, Jess.
No, just a few little snippets.
For example, you would know when we use gotcha cola.
Yes.
Why would you use it?
I would use it for its beautiful skin regenerative properties.
Yes, so it's an adrenal herb when we use that, obviously, but when we use it, it's going to be so good. I mean, we know it's a kidney herb too, but it does really, really restore the skin. So I've only ever used it internally, but some of those properties are fantastic externally. Something like licorice is fantastic on scarring.
Yes.
Like I've used it internally for people that have got scarring.
Yeah.
But then, externally to help.
And why is licorice so good for healing skin?
High cortisone content of licorice and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love explaining that to people, that we have this natural herb here that's doing a very similar thing to that cortisol cream that you're using, that's damaging your skin while also providing relief.
And a lot of our herbs will have anti-inflammatory actions, and they'll have soothing. They'll and we've even got herbs too that can help with pain. So that's why therapeutically as well we use them externally as well as internally as well. And also there's some herbs that have a slightly like wild yam. I can use that again. We use that a lot in menopausal mixes because it's got that slightly progesterone enhancing quality, but that's also quite balancing in a women's face cream as well. So that's got some nice quality. So and when it comes to the oils, more than the botanical, like obviously they're still botanical. So one of my favourite oils is rose hips, and I think that's because the very first tincture I ever made was a rose hip tincture. When we were doing experiment, and it was so beautiful, and it was red and powerful, and it was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And so when you're sort of looking at all the qualities of oils and you think, oh my God, rose hips, so high in vitamin C. And when I'm looking at collagen boosting on those things, you think, well, you can't really boost collagen if you put the peptides in, which you can through your collagen, but if you haven't got something that's vitamin C rich or zinc or selenium or any of those things, then you're not actually going to help the action. So you're finding the oils that will also do those as well.
Yeah. How beautiful. So, you've got those lovely tools in your liquid herbs that you can reach for at times when you're feeling that need for self-care, but also those beautiful botanicals in the topicals in your beautiful cream and the Sappho range that you're weaving into your self-care daily by putting them on your skin.
And the other thing too with self-care, some beautiful things, like as far as herbs, nothing like dried herbs or herbs that have been kind of put into oils to sort of infuse them, that can be added to baths or massage oils and things for self-care. Like facial steaming, all those sorts of things. The one thing I love, again promoting my products, but recently put out the cleansing oil, and I hadn't really known a lot about cleansing oils up until about 18 months ago, and I didn't want to put out a foaming cleanser. I didn't like some of the we do have herbs that do have kind of like a soapy saponins that have like a soapy quality, but it didn't quite do what I needed them to do. And then I discovered the oil. So in the morning I put about 10 drops in my palm and massage. The very first thing I do when I get up is massage that oil into my skin, and then put a warm face cloth over it. And it's almost meditative. It's like, I just go into that moment, that in the moment, and then kind of give myself gather, start the day, and then do the rest of it. But that's nice too. You just feel...
It's almost like that same ritual of having a cup of tea where it slows you down. You're not getting up running to start the day. You're having that beautiful topical and the warmth and taking a breath and starting the day slowly. And
talking of which, Jess, I mean, when I'm in my dispensary all day, I do have my little herbal teas on the...
So we've spoken about some lovely ways that you weave self-care into your days using plants, and I think that the listeners can really take that away too, that it doesn't necessarily have to be just the things that you're taking internally. Like, yes, a cup of herbal tea is beautiful, but there's other ways in terms of what you're putting onto your body, and the way that, making that a bit of a ritual and a bit of adding in some love to your body and speaking to your body nicely. In that way as well. And I was wondering, we've spoken a little bit about the muscular side of things and how when you're able to, you're feeling better in your body physically, but I was wondering what other sorts of benefits you start to feel in your body and your mind and your spirit when that self-care is at the fore regularly.
I think once you really start to put some of those things into place, but say particularly you decide, say it's your back, and you think, look, I need to give myself either an anti-inflammatory mix or an antispasmodic, whatever it is. Once you start to decide that you're going to have that mix, it's like that moment of empowerment. And I think that's the same with a lot of things. You've made the decision that you're going to turn this around. So as much as the herbs are doing it, you're focused, like the action of taking those herbs, you're focused, you're in the moment, the intention is in that. And that then starts that process of change.
The ripples flow.
Ripple effect.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that idea of the intention. You're including intention in whatever form of self-care that you're investing in, and it's that moment. As soon as you make that decision, that mindset can change, and you flow into that receiving state.
Yes, definitely.
When as carers, we're often, everything's flowing out, we're giving.
And the interesting thing is, like I might make myself up at like 100 mils or whatever it is to last the week, and then by halfway through the week I might be feeling so much better. The intention then has to be to keep on going, because once you start to feel better, you can kind of let some of those things slip. So it's,
and I think that's a really big thing with our clients too. As you said, it's very common when somebody starts to feel the effects of that intention and maybe the beginnings of that habit, and they feel so much better that they think, I'm okay now, I don't need to continue with this.
Definitely.
So I think it's really important to verbalize what you just mentioned, that the intention needs to continue for that investment to be ongoing.
And the thing too, I think what that can come down to as well in managing how a client moves forward is that, okay, you're starting to feel better. Well, maybe we take the dose down,
Yes.
and then, you'll see how much you're managing. We can support you with a lower dose at that time and keep on going. And then if you're still good,
Yes.
we'll wean it out. But
Yeah.
definitely kind of keeping that support going.
Yes, pulling it back to the bare bones as they start to feel those nice changes. So, Sue, do you have one special ritual or routine using herbs or a recipe or something that you'd like to share for self-care?
Look, I think we've probably talked about this in the past, but from my training, we came from a very old school training back in the day. So we were making tinctures that were 1 in 8s and 1 in 5s. So that's, for anyone who doesn't know, usually plant extracts are in a concentration of about a 1 to 2. So they're really quite physical.
Yes.
So a herbal tincture that was sort of, less concentrated was still our basis for a physical mix. And so this is probably my favourite recipe to use, in that you start out with about 5 herbs. So you've done your consultation, you know what a person wants. Maybe you're sort of doing a self-care and you're giving somebody 5 things like passiflora and oats and skullcap and magnolia, whatever it is. You've got 5. And then, because it's already less of a concentrated menstruum, we were taught you could put the bark flowers into that as well. So you might then, you've got the physical covered, you add in the emotional, and, say, for example, in that mix I'd put in motherwort because the person was anxious but still had some, heart palpitations. So you've got one thing happening physically, you're supporting that emotionally with the bark flowers. And then the last thing is a trigger dose.
Yes.
I used to talk about this at uni. People say, what's this? So the trigger dose is just using 1 to 12 drops of either a herb or an oil. It's usually a herb. And sometimes it can be a herb that you would not use in a high concentration, or that's been scheduled. For example, we used to be able to use pasque flower, which is pulsatilla. You can't use that in a high dose, it's irritant. But you can use 1 or 2 drops of it.
Yes. Yeah.
But say in that mix, I could use 12 drops of nettle.
Yes.
And nettle, you have to be careful of in blood pressure because it can drive blood pressure. So you don't want too much in somebody who's already having heart issues. So you may put 12 drops, which might light the fire but not boost the blood pressure back up. So you're doing, and that's what we call a chakra dose. It's almost giving them that kind of energy from that base chakra up. So it's an energetic mix. And as much as I don't use those all the time now, they are my favourite thing to use because they are so wholesome and they're so powerful.
I love that. It's not just the physical aspect of the person in front of you. You're looking at the emotional and the mental, and it's all there. And it's also taking a bit of the, you must take this and this and this. Everything's all there in one bottle. For someone who may already be feeling a little bit elevated, and adding lots of things in might be just too much. Having everything in all together where they just take it in one nice little dose, and it's just covering so many bases.
And over time I learned that it's not a one size fits all. We used to have this discussion at uni about dosaging, and they'd say, but you use drop, and again you'd use drop dosaging, like 15 drops in a small amount. So it was almost like a herbal homeopathic.
Yes.
And people say, well, how does that work? How does that work? And so, we'd have the people who'd followed like a Dennis Stewart line of 5 mils TDS as one thing, but then how does this drop dosage work? And my argument was the people who are ultimately really sensitive people respond really well to that kind of dosaging. Children really well. Those with allergies, there's so many people that may suit that better than a full physical dose. So it's about suiting the mix to the person, that kind of thing.
I remember loving the way that you used iridology to help you make your decision around dosage and the different constitutional types. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, so obviously with iridology, we sort of look at those constitutions that are people that their physicality is really strong, really resilient, and a really good fight back. So you can give those sorts of people really high doses of herbs, and yet the more open structure the fibres become, the more sensitive a person becomes, to the point where there's a one iridology constitution which is so open, the fibres are so open, they're almost too open. They take everything on almost spiritually as well. So those people you've got to be very gentle with. And again, you can really, you can make a person more uncomfortable if you try to give them a high dose in that sort of situation. So it's all about, meeting the need.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I agree, for some people a really high dose is almost like bashing up against a brick wall or pushing them over into pushing them beyond a state that you don't want them to be in. So, having that extra layer of knowledge around how to dose is wonderful. Yeah.
And I had a client last week who was completely non-compliant. He said, I don't like the taste of herbs, I will never take them. I said, okay, and I was thinking later, maybe we can sort of get around that if we need to. And I can remember another client many years ago who was so sensitive that we couldn't really work out what was needed, really bad Crohn's picture. And I started off with 1 drop and we built. And I think we got to about 30 drop, which is just a mil. And we got to a point where that dosage was really helping. So it was just but building as well, just to make sure.
I love explaining to people too around the lower doses about how it requires a little bit more of them and how they need to tune into how these mixes are making them feel, rather than just be taking that without any sense of mindfulness, rather than just encouraging them to throw back a dose and let the herbs work their magic, asking something of them as in, what are you feeling? What shifts? They may not be really obvious, but you'll be feeling subtle shifts, and encouraging them to participate in that.
And it's funny you should say that, because one of the other things I can remember many years ago being amazed by the photography of Dr. Emoto, where he talks about the crystals in water, so that an emotional intent over a body of liquid can change the crystal structure of that liquid. And that really made me think after that. I'm thinking, so the person in that particular documentary was giving herself self-care, by self-love, by sitting in a bath and saying this will kind of, because we're 70% water, whatever it is. So just thinking that, I was thinking, when I've been doing my herbs and dispensing them and putting, Bach flowers in, I'm saying to my clients, this is really good for you. I explain mostly why they're using the herbs, but why it's so good for them. And I just want to really build that intent that we talked about before, and get them on board with that as well. So my intention is their intention in that liquid.
Yes, and you just see next level change when that investment is there, I think, rather than separating, the model is often separate the person from the medicine. You take the medicine does this. You are participating in this.
Yes.
There's an intention there from the outset, and you are noticing and you're responding, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, I've got some people, I'll suggest that they get a mix made, and they'll say, oh, no, we'll get you to make it, sort of thing, because you know that you're sort of, you've got that, already got that rapport, but also that intention that you do put in for yourself.
Yes,
I think.
Yes, absolutely. The intention of the practitioner and the intention of the client is all woven in this beautiful web of how it all feels. I know this next question is going to make you feel like I'm asking you to choose a favourite child, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm wondering, Sue, what plant you have the deepest connection with and why?
That is like choosing a child, because I must admit I've had favourites, and my very first favourite was golden seal. Now, golden seal is an amazing antibacterial, antifungal herb. It's a great bitter, it's so digestive, and it just has so many uses. And when I went to live in the Northern Rivers, I was going to grow it. I had no idea of the situation it needed to grow in. I was kind of realised that I was not really well informed. And so some of my herbs change over time, and I do take ones off the shelf and think, oh, I haven't seen you for a while.
Old friend.
Old friend. But I think at the moment, because I'm dispensing this one a lot, is motherwort.
Okay.
I love motherwort because motherwort, if you sort of break it down, is mother worry.
Yes.
Well, wart is worry. So it's for women who pretty much worry too much, but where that anxiety state can then start to impact on the cardiovascular system, so that people end up possibly having heart palpitations and that kind of thing. So I love that it's a beautiful anti-anxiolytic, but it also then helps that cardio protective, and I love that. And it's just also, it's very balancing hormonally as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I love its Leonoris cardiaca, and it's so Leonoris in itself is the Greek word for lion. You know, bring back that
lion heart.
Yes. So that would have to be my favourite at the moment. It's a beautiful herb.
Yeah, I love its affinity for the heart. I love that it's motherwort, but it's actually really lovely for women in all stages of their lives.
Yes.
And as you said, I'm really enjoying starting to get down into the secondary and tertiary actions of the herbs, and how, you know, we can do so much with that one herb. You know, you've got that favourite, and probably she's a favourite because she does have such a wide action. You know, she's got that beautiful heart affinity in the nervous system, but as you said, she's got that beautiful hormone balancing action too.
Yes, and it's, you know, you talk about iridology before. I love it when I can sort of see a constitutional type, and you can see a variety of priorities that you need to cover, and you go, one herb, you know, like we were talking gotcha cola before, you know, thinking, oh, this person has a kidney eye, they're not, you know, they've got a scurfrium, so it's not transferring through skin, they're adrenally fraught, one herb.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? You know, we spend a lot of time worrying about the breadth of our dispensary. I'm finding the more that I learn about herbs, I've been reading a little bit of Saja Popham's, the evolutionary herbalist work. I read one of his Materia Medicas on calendula the other day, and just the depth that you can do with that one herb.
I know, isn't it beautiful?
Yes, yeah. I've always thought of calendula as a beautiful skin herb. I grow calendula, I make a balm from calendula, but it is just amazing for immune system. It's a lymphatic. It can be great for hormonal balance. It's just, really amazing. What have you brought to the table here, Sue? What have you got there?
So this year I grew so many calendulas, and my lovely friend that I used to work for, Trish, is now living here too. So we went in cahoots, and she infused it while I collected the flowers. I'm just trying to think. I'll put this on you. Have you?
Yes. Show me the colour. Sue's tipping a little portion of her calendula. Oh, if you could see this colour, it is golden. All of the magic of those beautiful golden blooms just infused in that oil, and you can feel it. Your skin is drinking it. It is
Isn't it lovely? It's just completely
so stunning. Yes. And that's how I've always really loved to use calendula, as a beautiful skin herb. But as Saja's teachings have shown me, there's just so many different secondary actions that mean that you can use calendula and motherwort for so many other things. I just love learning more and getting deeper into the knowledge of the herbs, and feeling more confident that my dispensary doesn't have to be as broad as I originally thought, because I can get to know these herbs really well, and I love the sustainability side of that too.
And it's funny, you know, sometimes where the herbs become known for particular actions.
Yes.
I can remember when I started to work in Lismore, sage was used in menopausal mixes.
Yes.
And I was astounded. I was like, oh, I didn't learn that. And I said, well, why would you use sage? I learnt sage as the number one brain herb.
There you go.
It was about, the sage is about wisdom.
Yes.
And so we know that sage is great for, that peripheral circulatory stuff, but it was more, so again, we can come from different trainings and different not ideas, but all of these things have been used in time, but then one will get a particular use because it's so efficient in that use, and then we might not remember or use it for the other use. It gets lost.
Yeah, I've been loving recently, I got my first copy of Greaves.
Oh, beautiful.
And I've just been, as you said, a lot of those actions that were traditional uses of the herbs have been lost. So I find I've been picking her up every day and looking, oh, wow, I didn't know that about that herb. And, obviously it's been used for centuries for that, but it's somewhere along the way our vision is tunneled and this herb has been known as this particular thing, but it has such a wider action and a deeper history. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Have you got anything else, Sue, that you wanted to add before we close up? We will include all of the information about the beautiful Sappho range and your offerings in the show notes so that people can find you. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we finish up?
Not really, Jess, but thank you so much for your time and energy, and you're just always so exuberant and lovely to have a conversation with. So thank you for having a little chat with me today.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I have really enjoyed it too, Sue. I'm so glad you tuned into this episode of Self-Care with Herbs, a segment of the Elder Tree podcast. The Elder Tree is a non-profit dedicated to empowering people through grassroots herbal education and earth skills, weaving a strong community of herbalists, healers and plant folk in Australia. The Elder Tree is in the beginning stages of creating a grassroots herbal education centre and healing sanctuary on the Atherton Tablelands, far north Queensland. You can head over to theeldertree.org to find out more and follow the journey on Instagram and Facebook. You can also donate to the Elder Tree via our podcast channel on Anchor or via the website. If you liked the episode, we'd love you to subscribe, and if you know who we should interview next, drop us a line. I hope you found something in this episode that has inspired you to begin to lean into those plant allies and to experience your practice of self-care blossoming and blooming. I look forward to sharing more ways you can weave plant medicine into your days next month.